Derek Gervin and Paul McKeskey. We're joined by our special guest tonight, University of Arkansas assistant basketball coach Clay Moser. Coach, welcome, man. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight.
Thanks for having me. I might move around here a little bit. I just got home from work, picking my kids up from practice, and so if you see a couple of kids, boxing in the background, that'd be my daughter and my son.
It's all good,
disagreement.
It's all good. Now, Coach, you and Paul go back from your D-League days.
Oh yeah, yep, and scouting days, and just like a lot of different paths that you can cross with each other in this business for sure.
Yeah, basketball is, as we know, intertwined in so many ways, and it's. I was looking at Clay. I was looking at your history, and I thought my history was crazy. Yours is even. I mean, I've moved 28 times. I know, but it's interesting that I followed you in Eric and Reno.
Yep.
And then I followed you in RGV also. So.
Yeah. David Stern once told me my resume looked like an EKG.
Coach, you spent time in the NBA and the college. Could you tell our viewers what you think the big differences are in terms of coaching the game and in terms of the approach of the programs at that level? You're at a big time program at Arkansas, but that in the NBA.
Yeah, Ricky, I hadn't been in college basketball for 30 years when I got this job or took this job here at Arkansas, and I was fired by the Lakers. No shame in that. We've all been, at some point somebody says we don't want you to be here anymore. So I had a good 8-year run there, and I end up in Fayetteville with Coach Musselman, which would be the 6th place he and I have actually been together. And honestly, with my responsibilities in the pro ranks, I hadn't watched a lot of college basketball. I didn't know any of the players' names. I didn't have any AAU connections, any of that sort of thing. But I will tell you, the style of play and the strategies and the tactics that people use are just dramatically different, like dramatically. It's almost in some ways a completely different game. And the biggest place that shows up is it shows up defensively, where like you can almost put all 5 of your guys on one half of the floor because, for whatever reason, the players aren't quite at the level to be able to, make you pay for that on the second side is, the scores. I mean, sure, there's scores and there's great players and there's guys that are going to be great players, but, there's just really not enough of them. And I know when I worked for Coach Valvan in the late 1980s, he thought you really just needed to have 3 good players on your team to have a good college team. And that actually might be the case.
Wow.
Whereas in the NBA, your 12th man's still pretty dang good.
Coach, I can't leave out the G League as well. When you look at all 3 leagues, NCAA, the G League, and in NBA, I know all 3 isn't the G League. I know it's preparation for the NBA.
Yep.
Which out of the 3 is more difficult on a daily basis as far as being a coach? And I know we have to still be somewhat like parents at that age, a second ear sometime for the young people. Which league out of the 3 is the most difficult for you on the daily grind, on the daily basis?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, Derek. At the NBA level, you're really beholden a lot of times to the resources of your team, to the positioning that your team has at that particular time, whether they're really ready to win or not, like if they've got the roster to win. And I know Derek and Mo, as you guys know, like if you don't have, that clearly is the case at every level, but at the NBA level, if you don't have the right roster, and as a coach, you're not the one that controls the roster, ownership and management does. And if you're not ready to win at that particular point in time, you can do the best coaching job that you've ever done in your life, and it's a grind, and you're not going to win, and you're making guys better, but there's just simply other teams that are just going to be better than you are, and that's just the way it is, and it's been that way forever, and it's going to be that way forever. I mean, so I don't want to talk about anybody at the lower end, but if you're not the Lakers or the Clippers in the West right now, I think the other 13 teams, frankly, are they're scraping around for scraps.
We agree.
I don't know besides those two teams who have a legitimate chance to come out of the West.
Yeah, one of the greatest coaches I ever played for and worked for was Don Nelson, and I remember him telling the staff one time in Dallas, said, "Listen, if you have great talent, you can be a good coach and win, and you can be a bad coach and lose.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any talent, you're going to lose as a bad coach, and you're going to lose as a great coach. It's just the way it is in the NBA."
Yeah, and I think you can also do a poor job coaching, and if you've got enough talent, you're still going to win to a certain level.
Yeah.
Coach Moses, I was just talking to Paul before we came up on the air here in Detroit. They've blown things up, and I'm telling you, Dwayne Casey is coaching his rear end off.
Yeah,
but they're losing about 8-10 points every night. But I think he's doing a heck of a job. But he's got 3 wins, and he might not get to 20.
Yeah, well, Dwayne. Yeah, as we know, Dwayne's a heck of a coach. He was coach of the year a couple years back in Toronto. I'm a Minnesota guy, so I distinctly remember that Dwayne had taken over there and was doing a really, really good job with a franchise that has historically struggled, and they were 20-20 and they let Dwayne go.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've been 20-20 since. So, it's just one of those things. And another one, another situation where you're just you're really at the mercy of management. You're at the mercy of ownership. And particularly if management changes while you're there, that's as you know, Mo, that's a death knell usually.
In the NBA, I can't count how many coaches of the year were fired the next year.
Yeah.
All the time. And it's amazing. People don't understand that. Right. And it's just situations. And, like you said, most coaches, unless you're Popovich, you don't have a choice of who you're getting to play with. It's like a chef and you're expected to make a great cake, but someone else is getting the ingredients for you.
Right. Right. Yeah. And when you think about the longevity of coaches, of course, he recently passed away, but Jerry Sloan, had a unique situation in Utah where they kept him forever. I think Quinn Snyder, just because of the nature of the franchise and kind of the culture there, probably can be there as long as he wants to be. But other than that, and it's not just basketball. You look across all sports, it's hard to stay in one spot for a long time.
And I was talking earlier, and I believe, and I've coached at every level, I believe the hardest league to coach in is the D League, G League, because you have 18 guys in training camp. Everyone wants to make the team. You have to cut 8 of them. And the next day after you make your final roster, none of those 10 guys want to be there. They all think they should be in the NBA. And now you have an NBA team that's going to send you players off and on. You don't know when, you don't know how many, you don't know who, and you're supposed to implement them in your system and in your rotations. And then you have to tell your guys that you have, hey, listen, I know you're a starter and you're averaging 25, but now you're a backup. Right. I know you're a backup, big part of our team, but now you are not going to play for about 2 weeks. Yeah. And that's very, very difficult.
Paul, do they factor that in when you take that job in the G League? Because I know that's part of it, and that happens like daily. Do they factor that in as far as the coaches, giving you guys a little more leeway since they know your roster is going to be fluctuating all season?
Well, I think some do and some don't. And Clay and I coached in the D League, now G League, where it was a different game back then. We were allowed to have, 27, 28, 29-year-old guys that were still, maybe they played overseas and they're trying to get back in the league. Anymore, it's a 25 and under league. So And I know that was a hands-on rule for the Rockets for us in RGV. No one on the roster over 25, no matter who they are. So, you know, I think it's more forgiving now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, you're really at the mercy of the philosophical approach of the parent club. Because like when you and I started out in the D League, Paul, there was no parent club. You had two, one, maybe two affiliates. I think in some cases you might have even had three affiliates that would feed people down to you. But it wasn't a situation where one franchise over the other. Like it was only natural you might have a closer relationship with one franchise over the other at the NBA level. But they didn't control your life. They didn't write your paycheck. They're not the ones that hired you. So that's our Christmas puppy. And she's a maniac.
She's good, Coach.
Yeah, she's half Beagle and half Australian Shepherd, and we can't get her to stop biting. She's about 12 weeks old. Angie, can you take her in the other room, honey?
I think people love the live aspect of Zoom,
Oh, yeah.
man. It's more of a home feeling.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Have you seen that commercial, Derek, where the guy walks out onto his patio and his wife's sitting out there and they've got like a nice, tray of lemonade and some snacks on the patio furniture and stuff, and he walks out there in his underwear.
Yeah.
He goes, I thought this was a Zoom get together.
yeah.
He's scattered back in the house.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Let me get everybody caught up. You're watching Deep Gervin, Big Mo, and our special guest is University of Arkansas assistant basketball coach Clay Moser. Hey, Derek, how many threes you take in your career?
Say that again.
How many 3-pointers do you
Me?
think? The most you ever shot in one game. The most you ever shot in one game.
I probably wasn't the NBA. We didn't shoot a lot of 3-pointers. I probably took 3. The most I took in my NBA career.
And Paul, you're a big 7-footer, but I know you could get out there. What's the most 3-pointers you shot? 2?
Probably 3 or 4. Probably.
And again, and I asked that question to come back to coach because the way the game has changed from the era Derek and Paul played to what we have today, when everybody's shooting 3-pointers. Can you hear us, Coach?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
No, I was saying Paul said the most threes he ever shot a game was 4. Derek said about 2. And now everybody's shooting 3-pointers. Can you talk to us about that transition in the sport and how it's filtered down to what you're seeing in college basketball now?
Yeah, I was actually looking Derek's stats up here in the NBA with New Jersey, and I'm looking at the threes he shot. Holy mackerel! And that's like in today's game, that's almost unheard of. You took 3 in 1989-90, Derek, and you took 28 in 90-91.
Yeah, Coach, at the time, that's what it's so different. But they talk about Steph Curry, and I don't want to take away from these guys today, but it wasn't something that was thought of back then. We was more of a mid-range game, and it was about getting the easiest shot. And today,
right.
I know it's changed. You drive and you kick it out, but our game was to finish from the 20 feet and in. The mid-range game is what we grew up on. And that's,
you had that, delightful little mid-post game, where you could turn over really either shoulder. If I remember correctly, you really turn over your right shoulder to the baseline side. Is that your move? If I remember right?
Yes, sir.
But you're
There's
right.
the scout. That's a scout coming out.
Am I right, Derek? Is my memory right?
Hey, sir, you are 100% correct. You haven't been on the show.
So if things are crazy in the game now. We actually drill, and a lot of teams do it. We're not the only ones. We actually drill getting an offensive rebound instead of going back up and putting it up and getting a 2 out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are relocating on the perimeter and you spit it out for threes. We call them spray outs, and that's a major factor. And Mo, you probably remember when you were playing, like the guys that were considered great 3-point shooters, the Larry Birds, the Dale Ellises, the Chris Fords, guys like that. And those guys were great shooters. But in that time era, guys just didn't take a lot of threes. It just wasn't like, it hadn't caught up. So part of it is that I think the skill over, like, I don't agree with people that think there's no shooting in the game anymore. I think there's actually an abundance of shooting. We play some teams where they have shooters at every spot, and that's impossible to guard. But also the analytical movement has spurred a lot of this on as well. We have a team in our league, Alabama, that they only take 3% of their shots from mid-range. Everything else is either in the paint or threes.
That was our goal with the Houston. I mean, when I was with RGV, we were told to shoot, and they brought us Troy Daniels and Isaiah Cannon and some great shooters. I'm talking about great shooters. And our goal was 53s a game, and people thought we were crazy. That you can't do that. Now you look at NBA teams and they have 50, and you look at college teams, they're shooting 30 and 40 now. That was not heard of, because I think the philosophy. When I coached overseas for Great Britain, I remember watching Spain and Lithuania and Russia and France, and they had 5 shooters everywhere, and that was 10, 12 years ago. It was before the NBA even caught up to that. But now, it's normal part of the day. I mean, I played with Craig Hodges, one of the best 3-point shooters ever. And I bet the most threes he shot was maybe 6, probably 5. When I was with RGV, Troy Daniels shot 18 threes in a game, or 20.
Well, we had a player here last year by the name of Isaiah Joe, who's with the Philadelphia 76ers, and there were multiple times he would take 15, 17 in a college game, which, with a longer shot clock and with a shorter game, that's almost, that's hard to do in some regards. But like, he would take 17 threes in a game, and when you'd look back, you're watching it live, you're coaching the game, you go back and watch film, you go, you know what? They were almost all good shots, for that particular kid.
Here's another stat that we worked on with Troy Daniels back when he was with RGV, and the Rockets were telling us the long 3. Have them shoot a long 3. We're like, what does that mean? That means a 3 2 or 3 feet behind the 3-point line. Yep. Well, why would we do that? Well, we want to know if he's more efficient shooting a 3 on the 3-point line with a hand in his face, or 2 feet back with no hand in his face. And we actually charted that. And now all NBA is shooting those long 3s now.
They actually have a term for them. They're called the super 3.
Mm-hmm.
Super 3?
It's called the super 3. And the thinking behind them is that it would be better to shoot a 28-foot uncontested 3 than it would be a toes on the line 23-foot 9-inch 3 that would be contested.
Yep.
And there are certain guys that do that, like the Currys and the Damian Lillards.
Trey Young. Yeah, Trey Young. That's his problem. Yeah.
Yeah, they call them super 3s. And we were studying that in LA too. So I'm a little bit of a stats geek. So I'm going to tell you, Mo. So Craig Hodges, for his career, he made 0.81 threes per game. So he made less than a 3 a game. And he took just over 2.
Wow.
The most he ever made is 1.45, and he took 3.43.
That's crazy.
That's the most. Now there are guys now that will shoot, they'll have 3 in by the first media timeout.
Oh yeah. And I coached, with Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki, and played with Craig Hunt, and they're all as good as shooters. Craig was as good a shooter as all those guys. That shows the philosophy of the game.
Hey, Coach,
no doubt.
Go ahead, Derek.
No, I'm just listening to it because it's interesting. Today, all it reminds me of we use our spot shooting. You shoot from the 5 different spots: the corner, the wing, then middle, then the other wing, and it's the same thing. They just expanded the range, drastically.
Coach, when you were talking about the Super 3, were you talking about that's the Super 3? You were talking about on the NBA level?
No, there's kids in college, like our kid Isaiah Joe would shoot Super 3s.
Super 3, okay.
Yeah.
And one other thing, you talked about 3% mid-range. What would, before this change in the game, what would have been a normal stat for a mid-range player?
Well,
they're shooting 3% now.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that for you, like with sheer numbers, but let's just kind of back our way into it. So if you're talking about a guy like Craig Hodges, who only took at his peak took 3.5 threes per game, like that was his highest year ever. And he probably, like Mo, when you were with him, he was probably the best shooter there, right?
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, that if he's your best shooter and he's taking 3.5, your team might be taking 10 threes.
Yeah.
But as a team, you're taking, say, 85 in an NBA game would be, like kind of a round, like a nice even round number. Like you're taking 85 shots in a game. So if you're only taking 10 out of 80, that's a percentage that's not very high. So if that's all you're taking from 3, that means the other percentages have to come from either mid-range or in the paint or short twos or whatever. So the answer would be, that number would be really, really high.
10 out of 80. I'm a math guy. 12.5% of your shots coming from.
Right, 12.5% of your shots from 3. And I think, Mo, like the Rockets set a record a couple times where they were the first ones that actually took more threes. Like their percentage of threes was in the 51% range.
Yeah.
So 51% of their shots were threes, and the other 49 were twos, and the bulk of those 49% were layups.
Yep. And we, like, people don't understand analytics because they think, because a player passes up a layup to kick it out to a 3, that's not analytics. Layups are number 1.
Right.
Free throws are number 2. Corner threes are number 3. Any other 3 is number 4, and an out of paint 2 is number 5. And even before the Rockets did that, we did that down in RGV, and we had games, we shot 70% of our shots from the 3. Easy.
Wow.
And the other ones were layups. We got a printout every game, 20-page printout, exactly how many shots we took from each corner, from the wings, from the top, what were threes, what were out of paint. We got all those percentages, and we would get a call, hey, you can't shoot 12% of your shots out of paint 2s. You can't do that. Fix that.
You know what? I was just going to ask you, Mo, if you would be willing to share that, because the word on the street is, if you were part of the Rockets organization, that you'd get nasty emails saying, what are you guys doing? Like, so and so cannot be taking those shots. You need to develop him as a 3-point shooter. So Mo, let me ask you this question too. So Gerson Rosas now is up in Minnesota. I was on a recruiting trip up there, and I stopped by the Timberwolves practice facility. It was the first time I'd seen it, but they had little round circles on the floor, all over the floor, that showed the point value of each spot. Did they have you do that in RGV?
Yeah, it wasn't as sophisticated. It was tape we laid down, but yeah, because the thing is, Coach, you have to get the players to understand,
right,
not only why, but when. We ran into a problem when Coach Adelman took over, because Coach Adelman played out of the corner series,
right,
out of the Princeton stuff. So we had a lot of guys catching on the elbow and playing off the elbow, and ended up with elbow shots, which is a no-no in the Houston analytics. So we came up with a rule that 5 or 6 seconds on the shot clock, any shot is good. So we changed that.
Right. Well, you guys keep talking. I'm gonna look something up for you, because I actually tracked this for our team, and I'll tell you exactly where we are now. We're not as sophisticated because we don't have the cameras and and necessarily the staffing to be logging all this stuff. So I do it just strictly off of box scores, but I'm going to tell you right now exactly what we shoot as a team from each area. So at the rim, we shoot 68.2% to your point, Paul. That's a 1.37 points per possession shot.
Yep.
On corner threes, we shoot 38.3% at 1.15, and above the break threes, we shoot 33.2. Now, at the paint non-rim, we only shoot 37%. And in the mid-range, we shoot 37.5. So, and the logic behind, not taking those shots, and it, here's some things that I don't know who's listening tonight, but like if there's non-basketball people listening, the logic tells you, and it kind of embarrasses me, Paul, that we didn't think about this back in the day, and Derek, you were in the same situation. Like with your mid-range, with your mid-post game, by the very nature of it, you were putting yourself in a position, and your coaches were putting you in a position to shoot a contested shot almost every time you shot it.
Yes.
Because you're saying, I'm going to throw it into him, and his defender's going to be right there.
Yes.
Because his defender has to be right there. So, and it has, that's just the era you grew up in. So now the logic tells you, if you drive past your initial defender off the three-point line, and you're driving now into traffic in the paint, and shoot a pull-up two, if that's in your game, even if it's you get to your sweet spot and pull it up, and there's guys that still do, like the DeMar Rosens of the world, Jamal Murray can do that. I mean, there's guys can still do it because they're such great players, but by its very nature, you could be taking yourself from shooting a wide open three on a swing, or a spray out three, or a pick and roll tag where the tag man is late getting back, to bringing the ball to the defense and shooting a contested shot that's worth less points.
Here's the analytics. So, Coach, what did you say out of paint twos or pull-ups? You're like at 37 or 36%.
We're at 37.5 on mid-range, and what we call short twos or paint non-rim, 37%. And to us, paint non-rim is outside the restricted area. So you're talking about the floater area, where you're in with logically bigger people, bigger bodies, and people that are contesting with whether it's verticals or they're swiping at it or whatever they're doing.
So here's for the people out there. Here's the analytics. So if you shoot 33% from the three, that is equal to 50% from the two.
Right.
So now if you put that into play, so you're shooting 37% from the two, and if you shot 33 from the three, you would be shooting 50 from the two. So that's where analytics come in. That's where people have to understand. You get more points for the three. So, when we did it in Dallas, there was Mark Cuban is Mr. Numbers. And the thought process was Steve Nash was one of the most efficient out of paint two shooters in the league. And he shot like 39%.
Right.
And he was one of the most efficient. So that's not even, so if you're a 33% shooter from the three, you're shooting 50. So, you got to, when you do the numbers, it makes a lot more sense.
Right. If you're shooting 33% from three, you're shooting 50%. And if you shoot 32% on mid-range, you're shooting 32%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Coach, can you win that way today? Because we know a few years ago when Houston was putting up all the shots and Charles Barkley was talking about how a team won't win that way. I look at the way the game has changed now, the evolution of the game the last few years. Is this the time that a team can win by shooting a high volume of threes, can win it all?
Well, I think Golden State proved that they can do that. But also, as you guys all know, come playoff time, like you can win. I think you can win in the regular season doing that. Like Houston proved that. Like they can win in the regular season. But come playoff time, when teams have time to hone in on you a little more, and take away what you're really good at, I think there has to be other things in your bag of tricks.
And the other thing when Golden State was doing it, and they were doing it well, shooting threes, but they were also a top 5 defensive team in the league.
Exactly.
So you gotta, you gotta play defense also. That's what we learned in Dallas. When I first got there, we had Steve and Dirk, and we were scoring 120, whatever, but we weren't playing any defense. And then it switched over to Avery Johnson, and we put an emphasis on defense, and that's when we finally got to the finals that year. So it's kind of there's a balance going on there.
Right, Paul. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Derek.
Don't you think? But Golden State was a little different. Golden State scored at all 3 levels. And then you had Livingston and you had Iguodala, who could also play the mid-range game. I don't think they didn't necessarily win just because of 3-pointers, because if you look at their players, Steph knows when to take the 3. Even Clay, when guys start running Clay off the 3-point line, he learned to put that 1 or 2 dribbles in. Guys like him and Danny Green and those kind of guys. But can you win if you're just shooting, if you're making that your diet? And you're playing against a team like the Lakers, aren't they smart enough? They're not going to let a team beat them by just shooting threes. So you still have to have somewhat of a mid-range game.
Yeah, I agree with that. You have to have a counter to what they're going to take away from you. I absolutely agree with you. And the other thing, like you brought up Sean Livingston, who was phenomenal in the mid-range, phenomenal. And one of the things and I think he had seasons he would go through the whole year without shooting a 3, which in this day and age, because at the end of the day, he's really a guard. And in this day and age, for a guy to do that, it was pretty remarkable to me that the Warriors never tried to turn him into a 3-point shooter. They said, this is what you're good at. This is where we're going to put you on the floor. These are the shots you're going to get, because these are shots that you're going to be able to make. So I agree with you, especially come playoff time. You have to have multiple guys who can do it from multiple places on the floor. And when you look at a guy like, the Lakers win it last year, where Anthony Davis, he's shooting more threes now than he ever has, and he's pretty good at it. But there were also times where when they needed a basket, they just threw it into him in that mid-post area and let him go to work. Because now, beyond the challenge or contested shot, you're now also putting yourself in a position where you might draw a foul. You might, put a little burden on the other team by getting them in foul trouble. You get to the free throw line yourself. And like Mo said, free throws for most guys are a higher points per possession than the twos. So there's still some magic in that. And there is a magic into being well-rounded as a player and well-rounded as a team, no doubt about it.
And you can't win any game anywhere, any league, if you're shooting threes and you have bad 3-point shooters. Doesn't work.
No doubt.
So Clay and Steph, they're very good 3-point shooters. So, like you say, you have to have a mix of do what you do and do what you do best. And if you're like, we played at a fast pace for half the season in the D League, we averaged 135 points a game, but that magnifies your turnovers. So if you don't have smart players playing at that pace, you're going to lose all your games because they're going to throw the ball away all the time. Right. There's a little, recruiting and getting those players in the right spot and teaching them the right way. And, you don't want, when I was coaching up in Canada and I think I told my guys, if you're not shooting 35% from the 3, you can only shoot 2 threes a game. That's it. Because you can't get up from 25% by shooting 1 for 5. You can get up there by shooting 1 for 1 or 1 for 2, and then you can start shooting threes again.
Right. So Derek, I was just looking at Sean Livingston since you brought him up. So his last 2 years at Golden State, he shot 51.9% from the floor, and he shot 50.1%. And the year before that, he shot 54.7. And the year before that, he shot 53.6. And the year before that, he shot 50%, which are phenomenal numbers. Now, in those years, he took 0.03 threes a game. He did not make a 3 in 2014-15. He did not He made .03 threes in 15, 16. So when you're talking about a mid-range maven, like that dude was a mid-range. He was a mid-range master.
How many did he take, Clay? How many threes did he take?
Let me see if I can get it smooth.
One.
Yeah, because
He
he's smart. Yeah.
So with the Warriors in 14, 15, he took 2. In 15, 16, he went crazy and took 12. In 16, 17, he took 3. In 17, 18, he was 0 for 5. And in 18, 19, he was 0 for 2.
You know what we tell guys that shoot and they can't shoot and they keep shooting and then yeah, but coach, I'm open. Yeah, there's a reason you're open. You can't shoot.
Yep.
Stop shooting.
Hey, tell me this, guys. Like you brought up DeMar DeRozan earlier, and I left out the other mid-range guy right here in San Antonio. You got your 2 best players, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yep.
And both of them, at last year, they started trying to stretch Aldridge out to the 3-point line. This year, DeRozan is trying to shoot a few threes, but that's not in his game. At some point, doesn't that hurt your team when you're trying to make a guy do something that's not in his comfort level? Doesn't that start having a negative effect on your squad?
Well, yeah, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, Derek. Like one of the things that if you're going to have DeRozan doing that, and I'm not questioning Greg Popovich at all. I just want to, like, if I need to sign some sort of waiver or something, like I'm not questioning what he's doing. But if you're asking DeRozan to do that, you're also taking away what I think is probably his greatest strength beyond the mid-range game, and that's his ability to get free throw attempts. Like that dude's a high free throw attempt guy, and if you're shooting threes, that frankly just isn't happening.
The free throws are number 2 on our list.
Yeah.
Right. Lay up some free throws. So get more free throws and take less threes.
Right.
Coach, you were talking earlier about you giving us numbers on your team from the 3 and the mid-range, mid-post. So would you rather have, you were saying guys are going to be defended in the mid-post. You would rather have your guy kick that out for the uncontested 3?
Well, that kind of depends, Rick, on who that guy is. Like if he's not a good enough player, he's not going to get any special attention down there, and he probably won't have anybody to actually throw it out to. So we have a situation where, like, I've got a scout coming up, and I said, listen, if they fear you in the post, here's how they're going to deal with that with you as an individual player. If they don't fear you in the post, you're just going to be able to play one-on-one against this guy all night because they don't really fear what you're going to do in there. So a lot of that kick out stuff has to be a situation where they're afraid of you in the post. And I think the post is kind of the wrong way to say it. Like there's not many low post players anymore. There's a lot of mid-range post guys, but there's not a lot of low post guys anymore.
That's a fact. You look even Luka and all those guys, they catch it a little further out. And then KD, all those guys operate now more. Yeah, they don't catch it on the low post now. They catch it more way out on the, even if you can call that the mid post, they got it way out. And then I guess, Coach, is that good plan? Like if you look at Houston when James Harden played, isn't he a guy playing with Brooklyn? Can he make them a better team just by the way he's playing now? I still think he should be shooting more and staying aggressive. But the way he's playing right now, is Brooklyn a dangerous team with him being a distributor first?
Well, I think any team that's got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and James Harden, wearing the same uniform, they're I'd put them certainly in the dangerous category. But as you know, Derek, with the amount of games you play, and the ups and downs you're going to have throughout the course of the season, and the kinds of things that can happen in the NBA locker room, and the egos and all that kind of stuff. There's so many ebbs and flows that I've always believed, like, you have to manage it in the micro sense to a degree because you got to stay on top of what's happening with your team. But you really have to manage that in the macro sense. And I don't really think there's enough data. There's not enough sample size at this point to really know what's going to happen in Brooklyn. They probably need, like most NBA coaches will tell you, and even management, if they're smart, will kind of tell you, we need 20 games to figure out what the heck's happening here with our team and the mix of our players and whether we need to make a move or whatever. And I don't know where they're at now. They're probably still in single digits with Harden being there, right?
Yeah,
They're at 10 and 8, so
maybe
they're
5 games or something.
they're sixth in the East.
Got a great question here from Frank Grazier, and thank you, Frank, for your question. It's for you, Coach. What is the mentality on defense against teams that take a lot of threes? Do you contest every shot, or you make it dribble off the line?
Well, we just out of sheer coincidence, the University of Arkansas led the country last year in 3-point field goal percentage defense. We were number 1 in the country, and our philosophy is that we like to have an early hand up in the eyeballs, which is what we call it, and we would even start to, as a guy would approach, mid-court, we would actually get a hand up, so that guy knew, like, we're going to have a hand up in your vision as you approach. So for the most part, we were a contest team, and meaning that even if a guy was a 29% 3-point shooter, we still didn't want that guy making a 3. Now, some people may not agree with that, and we fully recognize that. Some people would say, you know what, let the 29% guy, he can have all he wants. We're going to close out. Now, we've got different closeout strategies for different guys and different percentages and different volume and that sort of thing. But by and large, if a guy, unless he was in the teens, we would classify him as a guy. We don't want anybody making threes. So we're more along the lines of, we're going to contest every 3 rather than make guys put the ball on the floor and get off the line.
Smart. So you guys close out and block out.
Yeah. Now a year ago,
instead of running by your guy and running out of bounds, and he just stepped to the side and down 3.
Yeah, the side step 3. Yeah, we were frankly a whole lot better at it last year than we are this year. But the makeup of our roster is quite different.
When you say you're struggling a little bit this year, are the guys too aggressive, maybe giving fouling on the 3-pointer, or?
Yeah, we're not. No, we don't foul. We maybe have only fouled, I don't know. We've probably fouled less than a half a dozen 3-point shooters throughout the course of the year, and we're 18 games in. We're 16 games in at this stage. We're not quite as quick, and we're not quite as long. So we have a harder time getting there. Now we're much bigger to counter that. We're a much better rebounding team than we were a year ago, but we're not quite as laterally gifted on the perimeter as we were, and being able to get to people with great length. Like Isaiah Joe, who's a 3-point shooter himself, didn't get enough credit. Like, first of all, he's a long athlete, and he was a good defender. And we started a 6'6" center, and there would be and our point guard was about 6'2", who oftentimes would guard the 4-man, and he was incredibly long. He had a 12-inch delta on his wingspan, and so it was just the makeup of our team was different. We're teaching it the same, and we're trying to do the same things. We're built differently, and the trade-off that we've had is, because we're bigger, not quite as quick, we rebound it way better than we did a year ago. But we don't guard the 3 quite as well as we did.
And I want to address the question a few minutes ago where, so someone's driving, someone's contesting the shot. Is it smart to kick it out to a 3-point shooter? You got to realize that the 3-point line can be used as a weapon in different ways. You can shoot the 3, or you can drive on a closing out defender and create another shot for someone else.
Right.
So that's where basketball IQ comes in, and teaching and coaching. And I know firsthand, I've coached against Coach Musselman for years and years. And when he was at UNR, I got a chance to go to his practices. And the way he teaches and drills players gives them that knowledge and that basketball IQ to be able to do that stuff and be a threat in more than just one way.
Right. So Mo, you've heard we color code the shooters. And we've got 3 different colors. So we deem a shooter a red, a yellow, or a blue, with the thinking that red is hot, yellow is caution, and blue is cold. So we'll actually, so like Mississippi, we play on Wednesday. They're my scout. Every single player on Mississippi's roster has a color code to their name. And the players know what that means. They understand what it means. There can be some tricky ones in there. Like you might have a red yellow, and to me, a red yellow is a guy who shoots a high percentage from 3, but he doesn't take very many. And you've got a guy that could be a yellow red where he takes a ton and he does, he makes them, like he might shoot 31%, but he takes 6 a game. And in the college game, that's a legitimate, that's legitimate volume.
And people out there don't need to realize that it's all great to have a plan and to have a system, but it takes coaches, I'm not kissing anybody's butt by Clay and Eric, to work with them and get them to understand and be able to process that in a second in a game. And that's what real coaching is.
Yeah.
And, quite frankly, I don't think there's enough real coaching out there anymore, but people out there got to realize that's not easy to do. It's difficult.
Well, you can feel free to kiss my butt if you want, Mo. We don't have to. We don't have to take that. We don't have to take that off the table.
Never have, never will.
You're watching D. Gervin Big Mo with former NBA players Derek Gervin and Paul Mokeski. I'm Ricky Hampton, along with University of Arkansas assistant coach Clay Moser. Mary O'Donnell checked in to say, "Hey, Coach Mo, your friend from Moncton, checking in."
She's up there in the snow in Canada. I lived in their house for a year up there. It's cold.
It's cold. We appreciate you checking in with us, Mary.
Hey,
Coach running around at 10,000 square foot. Is he back?
Coach,
hey Clay, before we go, are you there, Clay?
Yeah, I'm here.
I just had a question. I was just sitting in my office, before the show. Can you just talk about any coaches and or players or people? You've had a 37-year basketball career everywhere you've gone that have really influenced you or touched you in a certain way.
Yeah, of course. There's been all kinds of phenomenal people that I've had the complete privilege of being around and that sort of thing. I will start, however, with a gentleman that no one on this call will have ever heard of, but my junior college coach. And I was not a good player, so I rarely talk about my career. I played at a non-scholarship JUCO, and then I played NAIA Division II, which was also non-scholarship. That was the level I played at. But I was a gym rat and loved to play. But my junior college coach was one of those JUCO guys. He was at the same school for 38 years. He had tremendous success. He could have gone on and gotten a nice Division II job, or maybe even a low Division I job. But he liked the community feel. He liked the smaller time feel. He's in the Hall of Fame. He won a national championship. All those things that go along with it. To this day, he's the best coach I've ever been around.
Wow.
And no one would never know his name. But he studied the game. He didn't have the pressures of the media. And clearly in those days, there was no social media. Recruiting was not at a cutthroat level like we are here. So he is, first and foremost, his name is David Retzloff. He was at a place called Fergus Falls Community College. And I think the guy is unbelievable. Jim Valvano was another one that I learned a great deal from. He was like the best motivator I've ever been around. Like I talk about it with some of the players that were there. And Derek, you might have played with some of these guys somewhere along the line, but some of the guys I had there with Chris Corciani, Rodney Monroe, Chucky Brown was there, Charles Shackelford was there. Like you might have been. Were you with Shaq in New Jersey?
Yes, sir. And when I went and played in Israel, actually my first year in Israel, 1994. The other foreigner, the American, was Mr. Ice, Rodney Monroe.
That dude could score, couldn't he?
Well, that was my team. That was my teammate my first year.
He could have been. Rodney was such a great scorer. He could have been a honorary Gervin.
Yes, sir. That's funny. I told him the same thing. We were like brothers. And that's funny you say that.
Yeah, so I had those guys, and I'm still in touch with those guys, and rest his soul, Charles is gone, but we talk all the time about, like, I've never been around a guy where you felt like his pregame speeches, they weren't canned, they weren't prepared, they just were emotion that he had coming off the cuff. And like, honest guy, like I was a young assistant coach. I was 24 and 25 when I was there, and you felt like running through a wall for that guy. Like, he was incredible that way. And he was such a great orator that he was fun to listen to. He was just incredible that way. And because of that, and he also was he was an entertainer. So he didn't get a lot of credit for how good of a basketball coach he was. That kind of, people thought, oh, he's just a recruiter and a showman and a motivator and that kind of stuff. But he was actually a really, really terrific X's and O's guys too. On the flip side of that, I've also been around guys that I have always said to myself quietly and only to myself, like, man, if I ever have my own team, I'm not going to do it the way this guy does it. And I'm sure, Mo, you've had those too, right?
But that's how you learn too, though, right, Coach?
Excuse me?
Those experiences are still good for you too, though, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, they're incredibly valuable. Incredibly valuable. You bet.
Yeah, I've said on this show a lot that people outsiders or I guess regular people, and not like basketball lifers like us, they would blow their mind to be in the locker room or a coach's meeting of some of these NBA teams that really don't have a clue. It's amazing. It's amazing, and it's interesting because those are usually the bad teams, and I've been on teams with bad, good talented players, but they're just not, whatever. And the same with coaching staff. But I agree.
Coach, I get to do this show with these guys every week, and I learn so much because Derek and Paul are so knowledgeable about the game. And then to bring in a mind like yourself, this game, I mean, it can be so simple, but it's so sophisticated as well.
Yeah. It's I don't know who said I'm not taking credit for this, but it's something that I've always believed is it's a really simple game that's hard to play. And it's because, you're in a confined space and there's a constant yin and yang with your opponent that are out there. They're trying to take away something that you do, and you're trying to do something, you're trying to take away what they do. So, and it's amazing to me, and Derek and Mo, I'm sure you guys agree with this, like the for the most part, like with the spacing now with guys just kind of standing on the perimeter and pick and rolling, and which is an incredibly effective play if you've got the right pieces. But there are very few guys in the game anymore, I think at any level, that even know how to move without the basketball. And back in like when you think about the Reggie Millers and the Larry Birds and the Byron Scotts and guys like that, that play at the NBA level, like those dudes had to work to get open. The Dale Ellises, like Dale Ellis was in constant movement, constant motion. There's other guys that come to mind, like Drazen Petrovic was kind of like that. Like he was in constant.
Rip Hamilton here in Detroit.
Yeah.
Rip was constantly running that baseline. Rip Hamilton.
Yeah. Rip, and Ben Gordon was like that too. I'll
tell you, you'll love this. So I got the opportunity to play for and then coach with Don Nelson, one of the great minds of basketball. And he thought outside the box. But the first year I was there in Dallas, and, we had Dirk and Steve and Mike Finley, a really good team. And he put in a drill in practice. You've done it. High schools do it. They should do it. And colleges do it. They should do it. Where, okay, now we're going to scrimmage where you only have 2 dribbles.
Yep.
Or you only have 1 dribble. Okay, now you don't have any dribbles.
Yep.
And it was mind-boggling to me. Of course, the best guy at that was Dirk because he knew how to play without the ball.
Right.
But I would see you have no dribble, and guys would go set picks for guys. But he has no dribble. What are you doing?
Well,
Right.
hey, Paul, I don't mean to laugh, man, but I was at a high school game. I went to watch a young man I know, so I went to see 3 games. It was a junior varsity, 2 games, the junior varsity and the 9th grade team. And it's funny what you just said, because I yelled out. I said, man, these guys need to learn how to practice without any dribbles. Seriously. And you know, guys don't get credit for that today. You look at Steph Curry, they only talk about his 3-point shooting. They never talk about how he's constant motion. And that's what the game is. And these guys have gotten away from that. They've gotten too much into the James Harden game instead of moving without the ball. It makes your team deadly if you got a bunch of guys who can play off the ball.
No doubt. You know, when I was advanced scouting and was in the same division as Curry, and this was before he blew up as what he is now, and before they were championship caliber as an organization, but he was so good that the traditional thinking would be, you know, like we need to blitz this guy. We need to get the ball out of his hands. And I always was on the other side of the fence. I said, he's actually at his most dangerous when he gives the ball up.
Yeah.
Like when he gives it up, now you have no idea where he's going because he'll loop and curl and spin. You know, he'll come back out the other direction and he'll just keep going. And he's such a special player that like, to Steve Kerr's credit, like he's allowed him the luxury just somewhere along the line, there has had to have been a conversation like, listen, if Steph is rolling and he needs to do whatever it is he needs to do to get open, we're just going to let him do it. Because if you track the patterns that he runs, those are not normal basketball patterns. But it's hard to guard because he eventually is going to wear your butt out, and he's going to get
So you get Draymond a lot of credit because Draymond knows him like a book. Even to break Reggie's record, that's how he keeps on trying to.
Absolutely.
So you saw Steph coming. You could see this coming from him, huh, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I did see it coming. Now, did I expect that he would become, you know, maybe one of the, you know, an MVP candidate? I didn't see that. But I certainly saw a special guy, and it's hard to do from a standpoint of, like, you got to be in incredible condition to do that, because when you're a kid like Curry, you know, people are trying to grab you and hold you, and like they're doing everything they can to try and keep you doing from what you're doing, and that takes a physical toll. And I don't know if you guys have ever touched on this, but with the cameras in the sky at the NBA level, you know, the analytics are like, you guys, like, they track who covers the most ground in the NBA. Are you guys aware of that?
Yeah, you have trackers too. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that does, actually, it's not Curry. It's actually CJ McCollum. He's actually the one that covers the most ground by and large, year in and year out. Yeah. And there's a whole thing that's called Second Spectrum, and they like the analytical part of it is, which I had the good fortune of being a part of in LA. Like, that stuff will track anything your imagination can drum up.
That's amazing.
That's crazy.
Well, when we were in Houston and also in Great Britain actually brought it over, and we had a special allowance in the D League to use it. They actually put a heart monitor and a tracker in the uniform, sewed in the uniform. Yeah. So your heartbeat was measured real time on a computer, and the miles you ran, and it's amazing. It's gone. That was 10 years ago. That's got to be crazy now.
Well, you know why Great Britain would have been ahead of all that curve, Paul, is because a lot of that stuff the genesis was in European football.
Yeah.
Like they were doing it with the soccer guys. So
yeah, we had carryovers from that to the national team. We did our physios. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coach, this has been an extraordinary hour, man. I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. I know how busy you are with the season, but we sure hope you can come back and visit with us one day.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
We got to get you back, Coach, because we didn't even go in. I didn't even go into Bill Musselman world, any of that stuff tonight.
Let's do it. I'm gonna text Rodney Monroe as soon as we hang up, though, Gerv.
And please tell him I said hello. That was my guy.
Yeah, he was one of my guys too. And I don't know how to do it, but I have a picture when I was the head coach of the RGV Vipers. I have a picture that the young lady you saw running behind me, she's now 13.
Mm-hmm.
I have a picture of the press conference when I was named the head coach at RGV, and it's me and my daughter, who would have been 1 at the time, and the Iceman.
Yeah, see, people don't know that George worked there for a couple of years. I got my Rio Grande. I have the Vipers shirts. I have a couple of red Vipers shirts.
Yep, he was like an ambassador, and he worked. You know, he did what he did with the Spurs, but he also did it with the Vipers too. So I've got a great photo. I'll have to track down and send it to you.
I got a Vipers red shirt I wore during the Chiefs game yesterday.
Just to be in red?
Yes.
Good luck to the Razorbacks, Coach. You're 12-4, 4-4 in the conference. Let's bring it home, man.
Well, I appreciate it. We're trying our hardest.
Thank you, Clay. Really appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you
We've
so
known
much.
each other a long time.
Long time. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, Coach.
And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Check us out next Monday. We'll be back here on D. Gerb and Big Mo. For Paul
Ricky and Paul, love you guys, man. Listeners, love you out there.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Take care.